May 15, 1945. Wright-Patterson Air Base, Dayton, Ohio. Captain Robert J. Henderson's fingers traced the cool, anodized aluminum casing. A captured German radio, designated Gerät 43/K. 42 centimeters long, 18 wide, weighing exactly 6.8 kilograms. Precision German engineering, a testament to efficiency. Yet, beneath the perfectly calibrated dials and sturdy antenna, Henderson felt it, a profound, unsettling wrongness. The weight distribution was off, anomalous. As if something vital, something sinister, was hidden just beneath the surface. The war might have ended weeks ago, but the battle for technological supremacy waged on in the shadows. For years, Allied intelligence had meticulously scoured captured German equipment, searching for secrets. But what if those secrets were never meant to be found? What if the most prized trophies of war were, in fact, expertly crafted instruments of deception, designed to turn victory into a silent, devastating compromise? Before we unravel this hidden chapter of World War II, let us know in the comments. Where are you watching us from today? Now, let's return to that laboratory, on a day that changed everything. The sterile hum of the Wright-Patterson Air Base Technical Intelligence Laboratory was a constant, low thrum against the backdrop of an otherwise quiet May 1945 morning. Outside, the world was exhaling, a collective sigh of relief after years of global conflict. Inside, for men like Captain Robert J. Henderson, the war had simply shifted battlefields. Sunlight, diluted by frosted glass and filtered through the faint Ohio haze, painted weak, shifting rectangles across the polished concrete floor, illuminating dust motes dancing in the recycled air. The scent of ozone, soldering flux, and old paper, the intoxicating perfume of technological dissection, hung heavy. Henderson, 32 years old, his uniform jacket discarded over the back of a worn, metal-framed chair, leaned over a metallic workbench. His sleeves were rolled up to his forearms, revealing the taut, sinewy muscles of a man more accustomed to fine mechanics than heavy lifting. His hands, the fingers long and slender, were those of an engineer, capable of both delicate precision and a firm, confident grip. An alumnus of MIT, he possessed a mind meticulously trained in the arcane arts of radio frequencies, electrical circuits, and the subtle, often unseen, logic governing military communications. As an officer in Yuzov's Technical Intelligence Unit, his role in these waning days of the war was to dismantle, dissect, and ultimately understand the enemy's technological secrets. He had spent months, years even, immersed in the intricate world of captured equipment, from radar components to cryptographic machines, learning the enemy's silent language of circuits and materials. He was a man who understood how things should work, and perhaps more importantly, how they shouldn't. His gaze, keen and perpetually questioning, was fixed on the device before him, a captured piece of German engineering designated Gerät 43/K. It was, on its polished surface, a masterwork of German industrial prowess. 42 centimeters in length, 18 in width, encased in a cool, anodized aluminum shell. The front panel, impeccably clean, displayed familiar tuning dials with crisp, white numerals, a small but sensitive signal strength meter, and a collapsed 1.2-meter telescopic antenna, nested discreetly into its housing. Clearly marked frequency bands covered the 3 to 12 MHz spectrum, a range typical for tactical battlefield communications. It was, by all appearances, a textbook example of a tactical transceiver, identical in form and function to countless others Henderson had processed from the war's vast inventory of salvaged intelligence. His preliminary report, filed just 3 days prior, had unequivocally classified it as a standard German tactical communication radio, exemplary build quality. It should have been a closed case, another item ticked off the long inventory of salvaged intelligence, destined for a dusty archive. Yet, Henderson felt a discordant note in this seemingly perfect symphony of engineering. A subtle, almost imperceptible dissonance that grated against his finely tuned professional intuition. It wasn't anything he could immediately pinpoint, just a persistent prickle at the back of his mind, a whisper of disharmony. He lifted the Gerät 43/K, testing its heft. The device settled into his hands with a surprising, almost unnerving density. He had expected the familiar, comfortable weight of a standard German military field radio units like the Torn.Fu.B1 or Torn.Fu.D2, which typically registered between 4.5 and 5.2 kilograms, designed for portability and rugged field use. This one, however, felt anchored, substantial, like a lead ingot disguised as a radio. He placed it carefully on the precisely calibrated digital scale at the edge of his workbench, its stainless steel surface gleaming under the overhead fluorescence. The illuminated display flickered, the numbers settling after a brief dance. 6.8 kilograms. His eyes narrowed, a faint line appearing between his brows. 2 full kilograms heavier than its supposed counterparts. That wasn't an arbitrary number. 2 kilograms represented a significant deviation, a volume of material that demanded explanation. It spoke of a deliberate inclusion, not an oversight in manufacturing or a slight variation in materials. It suggested intent. He retrieved the device, turning it slowly in his grip, his thumb rubbing against the subtly textured casing, feeling the mass shift. The weight felt wrong. Not just heavier, but profoundly, stubbornly unbalanced. By all logical engineering standards for a handheld communication unit, the center of gravity should have been precisely centered, or at least evenly distributed, for ergonomic balance and ease of operation. A soldier, or even an engineer testing it in the field, would expect a predictable heft, one that didn't constantly pull against their grip. Instead, the Gerät 43/K's center of gravity was distinctly, stubbornly displaced towards the rear section of the apparatus. He confirmed this with a series of improvised balancing tests, his movements precise and economical. First, a simple wooden dowel, then a more precise knife-edge balance from a spare parts kit. Each test yielded the same result, confirming the anomaly with unnerving consistency. The device invariably tilted backward, its weight settling stubbornly towards the rear. This was a configuration illogical for communication equipment, a design choice that defied the very principles of ergonomics, practicality, and efficiency that German engineers so famously championed. It was, in a word, an engineering heresy. It was as if someone had deliberately tried to make the radio awkward to hold, cumbersome to use. But why? For the next 2 days, the Gerät 43/K consumed Henderson's every waking thought. The lab hummed with the quiet industry of other technicians. Sergeant Chen, a radiography specialist, was calibrating his X-ray equipment across the room, while a junior analyst, fresh out of basic, struggled with a captured Enigma machine's recalcitrant rotors. But Henderson saw none of it. His world had narrowed to the peculiar physics of this single device. He meticulously reviewed stacks of captured German technical manuals, thick, brittle documents from Telefunken and Lorenz, often singed at the edges or bearing the faint scent of damp earth from their hasty abandonment in the retreat. He spent hours poring over schematics of known radio models, scanning for any precedent, any obscure variant, any explanation for the peculiar weight and balance. Each diagram, each photographic plate, each dense block of Gothic text, only solidified his perplexity. There was no mention of a 6.8 kilogram tactical radio. No design showed a rear-heavy communication unit. The captured intelligence, usually so exhaustive in its detail, offered only silence, a void where answers should have been. Still wrestling with that brick, Bob? Major Thomas Fitzgerald, the lab commander and Henderson's direct superior, chuckled as he passed, a sheaf of freshly translated intelligence reports tucked under his arm. Fitzgerald, a former Bell Labs engineer with a more pragmatic, less esoteric approach, paused by Henderson's bench. He gestured at the Gerät 43/K with a dismissive flick of his wrist. Looks like a standard field set to me. Maybe they just had an excess of lead counterweights that week. Or perhaps it's designed to give the user a stronger forearm, He laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that filled the momentary quiet in the lab. Henderson offered a tight, unconvincing smile. Could be major, though it seems a rather inefficient design choice for a military that prided itself on efficiency. He knew it wasn't lead, not in any conventional sense. And he knew it wasn't a joke. The answer, he felt with a growing certainty, was far more complex, more insidious. He moved on to functional testing, a process usually reassuring in its predictability. He carefully connected the Gerät 43/K to a bank of power supplies, oscilloscopes, and spectrum analyzers. Extending the antenna, he adjusted the primary tuning dials. The smooth rotation of the bakelite knobs was satisfying, The precise clicks confirming internal gears worked flawlessly. Static hissed, then cleared, as he tuned into various military and civilian frequencies. He tested voice transmission. His own voice, crisp and clear through the built-in speaker, resonated back from a nearby receiver. Reception was excellent, signals locking on with surprising fidelity, even from distant civilian broadcasts. Every primary function worked flawlessly, with no detectable impedance or anomalous power draw. It operated precisely as a high-quality tactical radio should, a testament to its ostensible purpose. This perfect performance, however, only deepened the mystery, adding another layer of paradox to the device. The irony was palpable. It worked too well, its conventionality a perfect mask. The discrepancy, subtle at first, grew in his mind like an insistent, unsolvable riddle. It was a whisper of imperfection in a symphony of precision, a crack in an otherwise flawless facade. Henderson had seen enough German ingenuity to recognize both its brilliance and its capacity for deception. The Germans were masters of camouflage, not just in the physical sense, but in the technological one too. Their U-boats could disappear into the depths, their V-weapons emerged from hidden bunkers, their Enigma machines hid messages in plain sight. Was it so far-fetched to believe their communication devices could harbor hidden layers designed not just for function, but for a far more subtle form of espionage? The thought gnawed at him. The war in Europe was officially over. Victory declared, celebrations echoing across the Allied world. But for men like Henderson, the intelligence war continued, shifting from battlefields to laboratories, from direct combat to a colder, more cerebral conflict. This device, found in a hastily abandoned underground facility near Nordhausen, a place synonymous with the V-2 rocket program and other dark secrets, felt like a lingering threat, a silent enemy waiting to reveal itself. It wasn't just a trophy, it felt like a trap. The more he studied it, the more convinced he became that its most crucial function lay not in what it overtly did, but in what it so expertly concealed. The true nature of the Gerät 43/K remained a phantom, a growing shadow of an enigma, challenging Henderson's every assumption and patiently waiting to be revealed. He knew, with a certainty that hummed in his bones, that he could not let this go. The answer was there, hidden somewhere within those 2 extra kilograms. And he was going to find it. The persistent anomaly of the Gerät 43/K continued to gnaw at Captain Robert J. Henderson. The extra weight, the unsettling imbalance. It screamed deception, a silent accusation against the very logic of engineering. Conventional analyses had yielded nothing beyond the facade of a standard field radio, leaving him with an engineer's stubborn conviction that the truth lay hidden beneath the surface, deliberately obscured. Standard procedures wouldn't suffice. He needed to go deeper, to dismantle the certainty of its design, piece by painstaking piece. Back at his workbench in the Wright-Patterson lab, the Gerät 43/K lay before him, an enigma of anodized aluminum. The overhead fluorescence cast a clinical glow, reflecting off its smooth, dark gray casing. Henderson, his sleeves still rolled up, picked up a micro screwdriver, its knurled handle cool against his palm. He retrieved his specialized toolkit, a collection of delicate probes, miniature wrenches, and custom-ground screwdrivers designed for the intricacies of German military hardware, tools honed through countless hours of dissecting captured radios, radar units, and cryptographic devices. His fingers, guided by instinct born of intimate familiarity with enemy craftsmanship, sought out the barely visible seam of the rear compartment. It was designed to appear utterly seamless, an integral part of the radio's robust casing, a testament to German precision. Under a powerful jeweler's loupe, however, faint, almost invisible score marks became discernible, the subtle signature of a panel intended for removal, but only by those possessing the precise knowledge, specialized tools, and perhaps, a certain persistent doubt. With a deep breath, Henderson began. He carefully peeled back a small, rubberized gasket that ran along the seam, its adhesive offering surprising resistance. Beneath it, hidden microscrews, each no larger than a pinhead, secured the panel. Their tiny heads were filled with a tough, epoxy-like sealant, a dark, resinous compound designed to resist casual tampering and make the compartment appear permanently sealed. Henderson selected a fine-tipped heat probe, carefully warming the area around each screw head, softening the sealant just enough to allow a custom-fit microdriver to engage without stripping the delicate threads. The process was painstakingly slow, each turn a delicate dance between applying precise pressure and avoiding damage. The air in the lab seemed to grow still around him, the usual low hum of distant machinery fading into the background as his focus sharpened to a laser point. The faint, metallic click of each screw finally giving way was a small, resonant victory in the quiet intensity of his concentration, echoing softly in the sterile environment. As the last screw loosened, he carefully applied a thin, non-conductive spudger to the edge of the panel. He exerted gentle, steady pressure, feeling for the slight give, the telltale release. A soft, muffled thunk echoed as the rear compartment finally gave way. It swung open to reveal a meticulously arranged array of standard radio circuits. Capacitors the size of blueberries, resistors like tiny striped candies, glowing vacuum tubes. All familiar, all perfectly aligned, exactly as depicted in the captured German manuals. Henderson felt a flicker of disappointment, a cold dread that his intuition might have been wrong, that the weight anomaly had been nothing more than an obscure manufacturing variant, a heavier chassis designed for a specific, unknown application. Perhaps Fitzgerald had been right, after all. But then, his keen eyes, trained to spot the minutest deviation, caught something. A subtle, almost imperceptible sheen behind the main circuit board. It wasn't the dull, familiar gleam of a soldered connection or the matte finish of a standard component. It was too uniform, too flat, too perfect in its imperfection. He probed gently with a slender, angled tool. The entire circuit board, which appeared to be mounted directly to the chassis with visible screws, was, in fact, mounted to an inner frame. And behind that, almost perfectly camouflaged by the functional components and the illusion of structural integrity, was a false panel. It was held in place by tiny, spring-loaded clips, completely inaccessible from the outside, designed to be discovered only after the radio had been meticulously dismantled by someone actively seeking anomalies, someone unwilling to accept the obvious. His heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drumbeat against his ribs, accelerating as the implications solidified into a chilling certainty. This was it. This was the reason for the extra 2 kilograms, for the unsettling balance, for the gut feeling that had refused to be silenced. With trembling hands, Henderson released the clips. The false panel swung inward with a soft click, revealing a hidden cavity. And within that cavity, nestled snugly in a padded cradle, was a second, utterly independent device. It was compact, self-contained, a miniature marvel of clandestine engineering Henderson had never seen before. It was encased in its own small, shielded enclosure, about the size of a deck of cards. A system of separate, dime-sized silver oxide batteries powered it, clearly distinct from the primary radio's power source, designed for covert longevity and untraceable operation. A minuscule piezoelectric microphone, barely visible, no larger than a pea, was hidden behind the speaker grill of the main radio, wired directly to a tiny, high-frequency transmitter. This secondary system, fully self-sufficient and completely autonomous, was capable of capturing all conversations within a 15-meter radius and retransmitting them, silently, insidiously, into the ether. The Gerät 43/K was not merely a communication radio. It was a sophisticated intelligence trap, a technological Trojan horse, designed to spy on the very individuals who sought to understand it. Henderson stared at the hidden mechanism, a cold shock washing over him, quickly replaced by a surge of awe at the sheer audacity, then a chilling sense of dread. The Germans had outsmarted them. They had anticipated the Allied hunger for their technology and turned it into their own weapon. The implications were staggering, horrifying. For months, Allied technicians across Europe and America had been dissecting, analyzing, and discussing captured German secrets, often within arm's reach of devices exactly like this one. What had they unknowingly broadcast? What classified information, technical insights, or strategic plans had the enemy learned from their own captured equipment? The silent, invisible betrayal was almost unimaginable, a phantom hand reaching across battle lines long after the guns had fallen silent. The audacity of this deception, Henderson realized, was a strategic stroke born from a desperate, yet brilliant, intelligence game. To truly understand its genesis, one had to rewind to the dawn of the war itself, to a time when German technological prowess felt invincible, when the very concept of blitzkrieg was forged not just in steel, but in the unseen waves of radio communication. In September 1939, as the Wehrmacht unleashed its devastating blitzkrieg upon Poland, the German forces operated with a crucial, almost invisible advantage: tactical communication superiority. While Allied armies still largely relied on cumbersome field telephones, flag signals, and motorcycle messengers whose dispatches were often obsolete by the time they arrived, German units possessed an unprecedented density of portable radios, integrated down to platoon command levels. The Torn.Fu.B1, introduced in 1938, allowed clear voice communication up to 3 kilometers, a revolutionary capability for frontline coordination, allowing commanders to react to fluid battlefield conditions in real time. Its successor, the Torn.Fu.D2, used at company levels, extended that reach to 5 kilometers with remarkable clarity. This pervasive network of tactical radios allowed for real-time coordination that other forces simply couldn't match. Panzer divisions moved with surgical precision, their commanders receiving immediate updates from forward scouts, adjusting their thrusts with lethal efficiency. Artillery batteries responded to fire calls in minutes, not hours, raining down accurate barrages on confused enemy positions. The Blitzkrieg, that lightning war of overwhelming force and rapid maneuver, was not solely possible because of tanks and aircraft, but because of the unseen webs of radio communication that kept every element synchronized, fluid, and deadly. It was a testament to the power of instantaneous information. But by 1943, the tide had unequivocally turned. The German war machine, stretched thin across 2 vast fronts, its resources dwindling, was beginning to falter, its early technological advantages eroding under the relentless pressure of Allied industrial might and innovation. Simultaneously, Allied forces were growing more sophisticated, and more importantly, far more acquisitive. The Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee, CIOS, had established specialized teams, veritable technological commandos, who followed immediately behind the front lines, often under enemy fire. Their mission was clear, dangerous, and vital: identify, secure, and recover any German technology of intelligence value, from radar arrays to rocket components, from advanced optics to communication devices. Laboratories in London, Dayton, like Henderson's own, Paris, and even Moscow buzzed with activity, each new capture meticulously analyzed, every circuit traced, every component scrutinized for vulnerabilities or potential advantages. The Allies were learning, adapting, and countering. The technological gap was closing, and rapidly. The Germans knew this. The Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, OKW, their high command, had received increasingly alarming reports from 1942 onward detailing the systematic study of their captured equipment by the Allies. They understood that their technological secrets were being laid bare, their innovations turned against them. With resources dwindling and victory becoming a distant dream, a desperate countermeasure was needed. Documents recovered after the war would later reveal the chilling brilliance of the German response. In March 1943, the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence agency, initiated Projekt Rückhören, Project Relisten, or reverse listening. Its objective was devastatingly simple, yet profoundly ingenious. If the Allies were inevitably going to capture German equipment, why not turn that capture into a vector for German intelligence? Why not make their trophies into their own downfall, transforming a moment of Allied triumph into a silent, continuous vulnerability? It was an act of strategic desperation, born from a growing technological disadvantage, but executed with cold, calculating precision, a final, insidious gambit in a war they were losing. The idea was to embed a clandestine listening and transmission device within seemingly standard equipment, allowing it to function normally, yet secretly betraying the environment of its new, unsuspecting owners. The Gerät 43/K, now resting open on Henderson's workbench, its hidden maw exposed, was the terrifying culmination of that project, a silent testament to a war that continued long after the last bullet was fired. The realization that the Gerät 43/K was not just a radio, but a meticulously crafted trap, sent a chill through Captain Henderson. The audacity of it. The cold, calculated brilliance. His mind, always seeking the root cause, now turned to the architects of such a deception. Who had envisioned this? Who possessed the genius and the grim determination to turn their inevitable losses into a weapon? Autumn 1943. Berlin. The city, even then, bore the scars of Allied bombers, a grim tapestry of rubble and resilience. But within the fortified, windowless laboratories of Telefunken, nestled amidst the industrial heartland, another kind of war was being waged, a silent, intellectual battle for supremacy in the electromagnetic spectrum. Here, shielded from the wail of air raid sirens and the distant thud of explosions, a team of Germany's finest engineers worked under intense pressure, their minds bent on technological salvation. At the epicenter of this clandestine effort was Dr. Wilhelm Runge, 47 years old, a man whose sharp intellect was matched only by his profound dedication. A former prodigy with a Ph.D. in electrical engineering from the Technical University of Berlin, Runge's reputation preceded him. His colleagues knew him as a man of few words, his thoughts almost visibly racing behind his intense, bespectacled eyes. He was less an academic and more an artist, his canvas the intricate dance of electrons and radio waves. For months, he had been cloistered away, a virtual prisoner of his own genius, tasked with an impossible mission. The Projekt Rückhören, Project Reverse Listening, was not born of abundance, but of desperation. Germany's strategic situation was deteriorating, and the Allied capture of German equipment was accelerating. The Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, OKW, and, specifically, the Abwehr, understood the gravity of their technological bleeding. Thus, in March 1943, the Reichsluftfahrtministerium, RLM, the Ministry of Aviation of the Reich, had diverted significant, direct funding to Telefunken, bypassing usual bureaucratic channels. The RLM, facing the increasing technological sophistication of Allied air forces, saw the urgent need for counterintelligence that could penetrate the enemy's most secure facilities. This wasn't a speculative venture, it was a desperate gambit to regain lost ground, a final insidious twist in the intelligence game. Oberst Karl Hoffmann, 52 years old, a career Abwehr officer with a gaunt face and eyes that perpetually scanned for unseen threats, had personally delivered the brief to Runge. Hoffmann's instructions were precise and chilling in their implications. Dr. Runge, we know they are taking our radios. Every torn.fu.b1, every D2, every unit of communications equipment they find is dissected, studied. They learn our vulnerabilities. We cannot stop them from capturing. So, we must make their captures informative for us. The technical challenge Runge and his elite team faced was immense, almost contradictory. The device had to operate as a completely legitimate tactical radio, utterly devoid of any detectable flaws, to ensure it would be seen as a valuable capture and brought into Allied technical intelligence labs. It needed to contain a secondary listening system, entirely hidden, capable of surreptitiously capturing audio. This secondary system had to transmit data without interfering with the primary radio's functions or frequencies, thus avoiding immediate detection. It required independent power, isolated from the main unit, to ensure its covert operation continued even when the primary radio was turned off or disassembled for inspection. Crucially, it had to resist moderate technical inspection, meaning superficial checks, even opening the main chassis, shouldn't expose its true purpose. Runge had spent weeks, locked away with his schematics and breadboards, wrestling with these formidable requirements. The air in his private lab was thick with cigar smoke and the scent of heated solder. The problem was a Gordian knot of physics and subterfuge. How do you hide an elephant in a teacup, and then make the teacup sing two different songs simultaneously? His solution, when it finally crystallized, was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. It was a testament to his understanding not just of electrical engineering, but of human psychology and the predictable patterns of intelligence analysis. The primary communication system operated normally, precisely within the expected 3 to 12 MHz spectrum, using conventional, readily identifiable circuits. This was the Trojan horse, the perfect decoy. Allied technicians would run their tests, find everything in order, and dismiss it as another standard German radio, albeit one of superior build quality. The secret system, however, was a ghost in the machine. It operated on much higher frequencies, 42 to 48 MHz. In 1943, this ultra-high frequency, UHF range was largely uncharted territory for Allied intercept operators. Their primary monitoring efforts were focused on the lower, more conventional military bands. A transmission in the 40s MHz range would likely be dismissed as atmospheric noise, industrial interference, or stray signals from nascent Allied radar experiments, which were themselves still in their infancy. It was a frequency band too advanced, too obscure, to warrant consistent, widespread monitoring. The clandestine microphone was a minuscule piezoelectric transducer, measuring a mere 8 millimeters in diameter. Runge had ingeniously hidden it behind the main speaker grill of the radio's primary unit. It was acoustically coupled to the speaker cavity, allowing it to capture all conversations within a 15-meter radius with remarkable clarity, yet making it nearly impossible to spot without a complete, destructive teardown. The transmission itself was a stroke of genius. It didn't broadcast continuously. Instead, the secondary transmitter operated in brief, almost imperceptible bursts, 0.3 seconds of data transmission, followed by a 90-second period of silence. Each burst used only 50 milliwatts of power, incredibly weak, making it easily confused with natural atmospheric static or random electromagnetic interference. The fleeting nature of the burst, combined with its low power and the obscure frequency, meant that even if an Allied receiver did stumble upon it, it would be almost impossible to identify as an intelligence signal, let alone triangulate its source. It was designed to be dismissed, a whisper in a hurricane of electronic noise. Powering this silent spy were specially developed secondary batteries, high-density silver oxide cells, no larger than a stack of coins. These miniature power sources, another quiet triumph of German material science, could sustain the intermittent operation of the clandestine system for up to 72 hours of continuous monitoring, far outlasting the typical duration of an initial Allied technical inspection. The combined weight of these components, carefully shielded and insulated within their hidden compartment, accounted precisely for the anomalous 2 kilograms that would later puzzle Henderson. Between November 1943 and March 1945, amidst the escalating chaos of Berlin, approximately 340 units of the Gerät 43/K were meticulously produced. Each unit was assembled with a chilling precision, its dual nature a secret known only to a handful of trusted engineers and Abwehr officers. They were not distributed randomly. This was where Oberst Karl Hoffmann's strategic mind came into play. Analysis of captured production records would later reveal a deliberate, almost surgical deployment strategy. These highly specialized units were intentionally left in facilities that German intelligence knew were on the verge of capture. They were planted like digital landmines, hastily evacuated airfields in France and Belgium, abandoned equipment depots during the chaotic retreats from the Eastern Front, sabotaged but not fully destroyed research facilities in the collapsing Reich. The objective was not to arm their own troops, but to infect the enemy. Each Gerät 43/K became a silent, waiting predator, a technological time bomb placed to observe its captors. It lay dormant, patiently awaiting activation within Allied laboratories, ready to transform into a silent spy, listening, recording, and transmitting the secrets of its unsuspecting new owners. The war might be ending, but the information war, thanks to men like Runge and Hoffmann, had just entered a terrifying new phase. The cold shock of realization had settled deep in Captain Henderson's bones. The Gerät 43/K, its false panel now hanging open like a silent, accusing mouth, was a profound act of betrayal. He had seen the hidden microphone, the tiny high-frequency transmitter, the separate silver oxide batteries. He understood the what. But the how, the sheer depth of its concealment, the intricate layers of deception, still gnawed at him. He knew he had stumbled upon a design far more complex than a simple bug. This was a system, an entire philosophy of counterintelligence, and his initial discovery, while startling, was merely the first layer. His mind raced, pulling back from his immediate discovery to grasp the broader tragedy. How many other devices, equally innocuous, equally insidious, had passed through Allied hands, their secrets unheard? August 17, 1944. The air around Falaise, France, was thick with the acrid scent of cordite and burning wreckage. The Falaise pocket had just closed, a brutal, decisive trap for the German 7th Army. Amidst the chaos of retreat, Lieutenant James Kowalski, a lean, energetic 26-year-old with a crisp British uniform of the No. 1 Mobile Technical Unit, picked his way through the rubble of a hastily abandoned Wehrmacht communications post. His mission was clear: to collect German technology. In the remnants of a wooden crate, half buried, he found 3 identical, pristine communication radios, the Gerät 43/K. They looked untouched, almost new, hastily abandoned in the frantic retreat. Bingo! Kowalski muttered, a grin spreading across his face. These were beautiful pieces of kit, robust and efficient. The three Gerät 43/K were meticulously secured and airlifted across the English Channel, destined for the Telecommunications Research Establishment, TRE, in Malvern, Worcestershire. At Malvern, Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, 34 years old, a sharp, analytical mind in signal intelligence, greeted them with professional enthusiasm. Her team immediately began standard tests: electrical continuity, frequency stability, power output. They disassembled the units, documenting each component, each circuit board. Morrison herself consulted captured German manuals for the Gerät 43/K, cross-referencing components and expected performance. Remarkable craftsmanship, really, Morrison noted in her logbook on September 3, 1944. Standard tactical radio, superior quality of construction. No notable or unusual characteristics detected. Performance within expected parameters for a field transceiver of this class. Her report, concise and confident, echoed her team's findings. They found nothing amiss. The units were reassembled. The detailed analysis, as per protocol, involved opening the primary chassis and inspecting the main circuits. But no one, not Morrison, nor any member of her seasoned team, thought to question the anomalous weight or to look for a false panel. Their established protocols, effective against conventional threats, were blind to this new, insidious form of deception. And so, as soon as they were reassembled and powered up for subsequent tests, the three Gerät 43/K units in Malvern began to silently transmit. Brief, faint bursts of high-frequency energy, barely distinguishable from background static, carrying the hushed conversations of Allied engineers discussing German vulnerabilities, the latest Allied communications protocols, and the very structure of their technical intelligence operations. Unheard, undetected, the Trojan horse had entered the fortress. Over the next 7 months, the insidious ballet of capture and deception continued across the European theater. As Allied forces pushed deeper into German territory, more and more units of the Gerät 43/K were recovered from abandoned bases, half-destroyed depots, and hurriedly evacuated facilities, precisely as Oberst Hoffmann and Dr. Runge had planned. Each new capture was greeted with the same professional diligence and the same fatal oversight. 9 units made their way to Wright-Patterson Air Base in Dayton, Ohio, Henderson's own lab. 5 were shipped to French intelligence facilities in liberated Paris, where similar teams of engineers began their own analyses. At least 15 units were captured by Soviet forces on the Eastern Front, disappearing into the vast, secretive network of technical intelligence labs in the USSR. In every instance, the outcome was the same. The devices passed inspection. Allied engineers, following established and trusted protocols, meticulously examined the radios, classified them as standard, and unwittingly activated their hidden secondary function. They were, in effect, bringing spies directly into their most secure facilities, placing them on their workbenches, listening to their every word. The Germans, even as their empire crumbled, were harvesting a silent, invaluable stream of intelligence from the very heart of the Allied war machine. May 15, 1945. Back at Wright-Patterson, Captain Robert J. Henderson had just peeled open the false panel of his Gerät 43/K, revealing the compact, hidden listening device. He had seen the microphone, the transmitter, the auxiliary batteries. The implications were stark, chilling. Yet, even with the false panel opened, a fragment of his engineer's intuition persisted, a nagging feeling that there was still more to the anomaly. The sheer density, the way the hidden components were integrated, it suggested a deeper, more sophisticated architecture than he could see with the naked eye. He had physically opened the device, but had he truly seen it? He remembered a casual remark from Major Fitzgerald days earlier. "Sometimes, Bob, you need to look through something to truly understand it." The words, dismissed at the time, now resonated with sudden clarity. Henderson needed to look through the radio. A full radiograph. It was an unprecedented step for an initial technical intelligence analysis of what was still, on paper, a radio. X-rays were usually reserved for unexploded ordnance, for sealed components too dangerous to open, or for materials whose internal structure was critical to understand without physical destruction. Applying it to a device that had already been partially disassembled was highly unusual, almost an act of intellectual desperation, but Henderson knew it was the only way to confirm the full extent of the deception. He carefully reassembled the external casing, though leaving the internal false panel slightly ajar, then carried the Gerät 43/K through the lab to the specialized radiography section. The air here was different, tinged with the metallic tang of lead shielding and the faint, electrical smell of high-voltage equipment. Sergeant David Chen, 29 years old, a skilled radiography technician, looked up from a schematic. Chen was a man of quiet competence, his movements precise and calm, his knowledge of his intricate machines encyclopedic. "Captain Henderson," Chen acknowledged. "What do you have for me today? Something particularly insidious, you say?" "Precisely, Sergeant. Far more insidious than explosive," Henderson replied, placing the Gerät 43/K gently on a specialized, adjustable platform in the chamber. He briefly explained his theory of the hidden system, the anomalous weight, the concealed components. "I need to see the full architecture. Every wire, every component, every layer of shielding. Without further disassembly, if possible." Chen's eyebrows rose, a flicker of professional curiosity. "A radio for a full radiograph? Unusual, but intriguing, sir." "Very well." He adjusted the platform, positioning the Gerät 43/K carefully. He moved with practiced ease over the controls of the massive X-ray machine. Heavy lead-lined doors hissed shut, sealing the device within. Chen retreated to the control panel, a wall of dials, meters, and warning lights. "Stand clear, Captain," Chen warned, adjusting the kilovoltage and milliamperage. A low, powerful hum began to emanate from the shielded chamber. The warning light above the door glowed an ominous red. The X-rays, invisible and pervasive, penetrated the aluminum casing, slicing through the intricate layers of components, revealing the unseen. Minutes later, the process complete, Chen expertly retrieved the photographic plates from the developing tank, hanging them carefully in the drying rack. Henderson leaned forward, his breath held. The first images were faint, ghostly impressions, but as they dried, they sharpened, solidifying into undeniable forms. Henderson stared, his face a mask of grim fascination. The X-ray images laid bare the radio's true complexity, its dual nature graphically exposed. There, unmistakable, were two completely separate power circuits, each tracing its own intricate path. One for the main radio, and a second, much smaller, completely isolated circuit for the clandestine system, drawing from those unique silver oxide batteries. And even more startling, two distinct antenna structures, cleverly sharing the same physical telescopic rod, one for the primary radio, and a second, ultra-high frequency antenna, almost hair-thin, spiraling imperceptibly within the main rod, meticulously shielded from interference. Finally, the images clearly showed a heavily shielded compartment encasing the entire secondary device, a Faraday cage in miniature, designed to prevent its high-frequency transmissions from interfering with the primary radio, and to resist any attempts at detection by stray electromagnetic fields. Henderson felt a cold dread intertwine with a profound, almost begrudging respect for Dr. Runge's genius. This wasn't just a hidden bug. This was a masterwork of clandestine engineering, a testament to an enemy's ability to turn defeat into a silent, devastating counterattack. The X-ray images, stark and undeniable, had utterly stripped away the camouflage, revealing the true face of the technological trap. The Gerät 43/K, fully exposed, was not just a clever deception. It was a chilling testament to the unseen war that still raged, and a stark warning that even in victory, vigilance could not falter. The stark, undeniable images from Sergeant Chen's radiography equipment lay spread across Captain Henderson's workbench, each ghostly silhouette a revelation, each line of hidden circuitry a silent scream of betrayal. Two separate power circuits, two distinct antennas, a shielded compartment. The full, chilling architecture of the Gerät 43/K's deception was finally laid bare. Henderson stared at the plates, a profound sense of unease settling over him, colder than the metal casing of the device itself. His meticulous curiosity had not merely uncovered a technical anomaly, it had exposed a gaping vulnerability in the very heart of Allied intelligence. The unseen war, he realized, had been far more insidious than anyone had imagined. News of Henderson's discovery spread through Wright-Patterson like an electric current. It wasn't a rumor, but a cold, hard fact, backed by irrefutable X-ray evidence and a fully disassembled device with its secret maw exposed. Within hours, Major Thomas Fitzgerald, Henderson's superior, had convened an emergency meeting of the base's highest-ranking intelligence officers. Fitzgerald, usually a man of calm authority, paced the room, his face etched with a grim disbelief that bordered on anger. "Gentlemen," Fitzgerald began, his voice low but sharp, "Captain Henderson here has uncovered something unprecedented, something that redefines what we thought we knew about enemy intelligence operations." He gestured to Henderson, who stood quietly by the X-ray plates, now tacked to a makeshift corkboard. Henderson explained his findings, calmly and clinically, detailing the weight discrepancy, the false panel, the hidden mic, the burst transmission system, and finally, the damning X-ray evidence. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the rustle of uniforms and the occasional sharp intake of breath. The immediate consequence was swift and decisive. A directive, signed by Fitzgerald himself and immediately ratified by higher command, went out to every Allied technical intelligence lab. Isolate all Gerät 43/K units. Out of the approximately 340 units produced by Telefunken, Allied forces were known to be in possession of 43 such devices across various installations. From London to Paris, to Dayton and even the Soviet Union, these standard radios were instantly deemed contaminated. Each of the 43 units was immediately isolated in custom-built Faraday cages, metallic enclosures designed to block electromagnetic fields, severing any possible connection to the outside world. The labs, once bustling with the open analysis of captured tech, now moved with a new, chilling caution. A massive, coordinated investigation was launched. Major Fitzgerald took lead, assembling an ad hoc task force with Henderson at its core. Their first priority, to conduct a thorough destructive analysis of every available Gerät 43/K. Technicians, now armed with Henderson's precise instructions and X-ray blueprints, carefully peeled back the layers of deception on each device. One by one, the hidden compartments were found, the silver oxide batteries identified, the minuscule piezoelectric microphones located. The evidence was irrefutable. Every single one of the 43 units contained the secondary listening system. The Germans had not merely experimented. They had successfully deployed a widespread network of clandestine listening posts embedded within Allied operations. The next, agonizing step was to ascertain the extent of the damage. This required looking back, painstakingly sifting through the electronic detritus of months of wartime signal intelligence. Major Fitzgerald immediately reached out to Dr. Elizabeth Morrison at the Telecommunications Research Establishment in Malvern. Morrison, initially skeptical, was quickly brought up to speed by a secure, high-priority communique detailing Henderson's findings. The news hit her like a physical blow. Her own team had dismissed the devices as unremarkable. The thought of their lab, a hub of sensitive discussions, having been unknowingly compromised, was a bitter pill. Morrison and her team, now working under a pall of grim urgency, were tasked with reviewing retroactively all captured frequency monitoring records, specifically targeting the obscure 42 to 48 MHz range that Dr. Runge had so cleverly exploited. It was a daunting task, sifting through mountains of recorded static and ambient noise. For months, these faint, brief bursts of signal had been dismissed as atmospheric interference, random noise, or technical anomalies, the very camouflage Runge had engineered. But now, with a precise signature to look for, Morrison's team began to identify them. Each short, sharp blip on an old spectrum analyzer recording, once ignored, now represented a chilling confirmation. The transmissions had started within hours of the devices arriving at Allied labs, exactly as Projekt Rückhören intended. The calculations that followed were devastating. Assuming an average of 8 hours of active operation per day during periods of intense testing, a conservative estimate given the importance of the captured equipment, each device had transmitted approximately 160 bursts of data. Multiplied by the 43 units known to be in Allied possession, this amounted to over 6,800 distinct transmissions. Potentially hundreds of hours of conversations, technical discussions, procedural details, and strategic planning had been captured and relayed directly to German intelligence. The impact on Allied security was profound. Laboratory personnel, once feeling secure within their protected facilities, now grappled with the terrifying realization of how openly they had discussed sensitive information. Engineers debated vulnerabilities of Allied technology near the very equipment they were analyzing. Officers of intelligence planned future capture operations, sharing classified tactical details. All of it potentially compromised. The sheer volume and nature of the compromised data sent a shiver through the Allied command structure. It was a violation of the highest order, an unseen enemy infiltrating their inner sanctum. Yet, a profound irony underscored the entire discovery. Who was listening? By May 1945, Germany had surrendered. The war was officially over. Analysis of the Gerät 43/K's transmission range, estimated at 50 to 80 kilometers, depending on atmospheric conditions and terrain, indicated that receiving stations would need to be relatively close to the Allied labs. Investigations, tracing back German signal intelligence networks, revealed that the extensive German listening network, once vast and efficient, had largely collapsed weeks earlier, in mid-April 1945, when the last operational receiving stations were either captured or destroyed by advancing Allied forces. The true, ultimate impact of Projekt Rückhören thus remains shrouded in a fog of war. Documents captured from the Abwehr after the war, fragmented and often incomplete, provided tantalizing clues. They mentioned technical intelligence derived from special sources, informing decisions about air defense resource allocation and armaments production priorities between August 1944 and April 1945, a period of approximately 8 months when the Gerät 43/K was actively transmitting. But the full scope of what the Germans had learned, how they had used it, and what long-term consequences it might have had, could never be fully quantified. The silent data stream had gone dark just before its ultimate exposure, leaving a chilling unanswered question hanging in the air. The Gerät 43/K, exposed in its full, chilling ingenuity, represented a unique and transformative moment in the history of technological warfare. It vividly demonstrated the transformation of intelligence capture into an active vector for counterintelligence. Dr. Runge and his engineers had grasped a fundamental truth. They could not prevent their equipment from being captured. So, they accepted that inevitability and brilliantly turned the act of capture into an opportunity for espionage. It was a final, devastating blow from a defeated enemy, a ghost in the machine that haunted the victors. The discovery of Henderson's Gerät forced a complete and painful re-evaluation of technical intelligence protocols across the Allied world. From 1946 onward, new procedures were implemented with grim urgency. Every piece of captured equipment, regardless of its apparent innocuousness, was now subject to immediate, complete radio frequency isolation within Faraday cages before any detailed examination. X-ray inspection became a mandatory preliminary step for all newly acquired enemy technology, to detect hidden compartments and anomalous internal structures before physical disassembly began. Laboratories themselves were rebuilt, or upgraded, to incorporate advanced shielding. The costs were staggering, running into millions of dollars, a direct financial consequence caused by a single, brilliantly designed German device. But the most profound legacy was philosophical. The Gerät 43/K proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that captured technology was not a neutral trophy, an inert artifact of past battles. It was a potential active weapon, capable of inflicting damage long after the conventional fighting had ceased. It demonstrated that engineers, even those facing inevitable defeat, could still inflict significant harm through their creations, turning their ingenuity into a lingering threat. It shattered the illusion of a clear line between intelligence and counterintelligence, between capturing and being captured. The battlefield had expanded to the workbench, and the enemy was already inside. When Captain Henderson finally closed the false panel of that first device in May 1945, gently sealing its secret away again, he understood something that would fundamentally alter his career and shape his worldview for decades to come. In modern technological warfare, victory and capture were not opposites. They were, sometimes, terrifyingly, the same thing. And the shadows of Projekt Rückhören would forever underscore the brutal, unseen complexities of the intelligence game. The silence that fell upon Captain Henderson's lab that May afternoon in 1945 was not one of peace, but of profound unease. The Gerät 43/K, once a seemingly innocuous trophy, lay exposed in its chilling ingenuity, its false panels and hidden circuits a testament to a war far more subtle than bombs and bullets. It was a silent whisper of betrayal, a ghost in the machine that had permeated the very sanctuaries of Allied intelligence. Henderson had closed the compartment, But the Pandora's box of implications had been irrevocably opened, forever altering the landscape of technological warfare. The revelations that followed Henderson's discovery reverberated through the Allied command. The furious scramble to isolate every Gerät 43/K, the devastating retrospective analysis, the cold calculations of compromised intelligence. It all painted a picture of an enemy, even in defeat, capable of inflicting unseen damage. Dr. Runge's brainchild, a desperate act of genius, had succeeded beyond its creator's wildest hopes, turning Allied vigilance into a conduit for their own secrets. Though the German listening network had vanished weeks before the final unveiling, leaving the ultimate harvest of Projekt Rückhören forever elusive, the seeds of doubt and the chilling lessons learned would endure. For Henderson, and for countless others, the Gerät 43/K became a stark, metallic reminder that the spoils of war can sometimes carry the deadliest of hidden costs. It demonstrated that victory itself could be a vector for future vulnerability, that the very act of acquisition could be an act of profound self-compromise. The lines between intelligence and counterintelligence, between hunter and hunted, blurred into an indistinguishable, perilous gray. It was a philosophical shift, a permanent recalibration of trust in a world where technology promised both revelation and deception in equal measure. In the modern age of conflict, even the quiet hum of a captured radio could carry the weight of a silent, ongoing war. What do you think was the most damning piece of information the Germans could have gleaned from the Allied labs? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to WW2 Hidden Files for more glimpses into the shadowy corners of history.